landscape photography for tonight. We thought tonight that we'd rehash our Tarkine show. I didn't actually get to show my pictures due to technical problems last time, but also we thought we'd invite our good friend Loic along tonight as well to join us and also speak about the Tarkine area. He's been out there many times over many years, and so he's got a wealth of information and a beautiful image portfolio from there. So how's everyone been up to much stuff? I know, Nick, you've been out shooting a fair.
Yeah, I've actually just come back from up in the Tarkine area, and I also spent some time in the Great Western Tiers. So yeah, had 4 nights away, and basically spent 4 days of that in rainforest, and it was typical rainforest, very wet. And the problem with rainforest is that not only does it rain, but then everything that you brush past is covered in water. So you tend to get saturated, particularly in the west of Tasmania, where the growth is thick. But yeah, I had a good time, and yeah, lots of shots to go through. And yeah, one of the areas I went to was the Kew rainforest, which is near the Kew River. That's QUE, which is on the eastern side of the Tarkine and bounds the sort of Murchison Highway area, which is the highway that goes from sort of Queenstown, Rosebery up through towards Waratah and then on to towards Burnie. And yeah, that particular area is threatened by logging and has been subject of environmental actions. And I hadn't actually been in that particular pocket of forest before, so I thought I'd camp there the night and have a look in there. And it was truly wonderful and absolutely amazing rainforest. But yeah, the weather wasn't kind, so I did get very wet. But I got a few nice shots from there. And yeah, then the next day I went to another very special spot that will remain nameless. I've been there before, and it's actually the spot that's in my background tonight, or where I got the photo from, my background tonight. And it's a very special area where a beautiful creek runs through, and lush rainforest, and lots of leeches. In fact, last time I was there, I got a leech bite on my leg that ended up getting infected, and I had to go to hospital and have a drip with antibiotics because it got.
The leech didn't have to go to hospital.
No, the leech passed away sadly after I discovered him. But it was maybe 4 or 5 days later, I started getting a raging infection from the bite. Went all the way up my leg, all the way up to my groin, and I couldn't.
Much impact.
Yeah, I couldn't walk, and had to resort to IV antibiotics. So I did get a few leech bites on this trip, but I haven't been scratching them. I think the problem was not the leech bite itself, which for most people they're just like a mosquito bite, very itchy. But I think it was more the fact I had filthy fingers. I'd been away for about 4 or 5 days and just hadn't had a shower and was covered in crap, and decided to scratch the bejesus out of the leech bite, and I think that's what was my downfall in the end for that. But
well, last time you were over there, you saw some was it lamprey or something as well on the move?
Oh yeah, that was only in October last year. Yeah. A different trip that was with my family actually, when we went on our token camper van trip around Tasmania when we were supposed to have been in Scotland, and we came across some lamprey. We didn't mention it the last Tarkine show. A lamprey migration, and lampreys they're not an eel technically, but people call them lamprey eels, but they're just called lampreys, and they migrate up rivers, and they sort of jump up waterfalls. And we came to this waterfall that I wanted to show the kids, and there were literally hundreds upon hundreds of these lampreys sucking onto the side of the waterfall and climbing up through the bush, and to see something that looks pretty much like a snake sort of climbing up through the bush, and hundreds of them, was pretty amazing. And so we spent a good amount of time there with that, and yeah, I'd never seen anything like it. So yeah, that was fantastic. But
and you've been pretty flat out as well, Paul.
Well, I like the way he started the show because Nick was having a go at us. The reason he didn't show any photos of me and Nick took too long. So he aimed up to it, which was good. I was standing next to Loic last night watching the super moon rise, literally just a few feet from his house because he lives right on the most magnificent place probably locally to watch it rise. And I was sitting there scratching my head about how I handle the incredibly fast contrast ratio changes that happen from a moon rise that I find really frustrating. But it was very rare for me to go chasing after a moonrise. I just very spontaneously ran out the door, about 5 minutes spare to get there in time. And I was meant to meet my partner there, and she got stuck in traffic to watch the romantic moonrise. But I had Love's company instead.
Oh,
It's very nice.
Sounds very romantic.
Oh.
I actually did a bit of moon chasing myself last night and went up Canungy, Mount Wellington, and had a lot of fun and stayed. I think I stayed there until about 7:30 in the end, just trying a few different things with the moon and the way that the moon was shining across all of the waters out from the Derwent and all of that. So it was pretty spectacular from the mountain, I must say. And I think given how strong the moon was and how clear the sky was, it was and how calm it was on the mountain too. It's been able to get out the long lens and take some shots of the city under the moonlight was pretty special, actually, given that there wasn't much vibration of the tripod or anything like that, which you don't get very often up there. So felt pretty grateful I made the last minute decision like you did, Paul, to do that. So
yeah, nice still. I didn't last as long as that, but it was a good little exercise for me. I always feel like I need a 600mm lens to do any sort of moon stuff, which I don't have.
That 100 to 500, Paul, put the pennies away.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Tarkine's calling. I'm off to the Tarkine on Monday. I'm running an art therapy camp, which probably the 5th or 6th time I've run it with a private school that's very involved in wilderness therapy in terms of using the experience of being in a wild place to connect with landscape and themselves, and use it as an opportunity to grow and develop in terms of their relationship with nature as well as themselves. And photography is a wonderful medium to connect the dots, I guess, between young people and landscape and telling the story on behalf and sharing it sort of with the world. So that's quite a beautiful thing that I'm looking forward to. And I literally get back at 10 at night and I leave at 4:30 in the morning to go on a 5-day aerial safari around the entire of South Australia with Tim Raitt, who's on the show a month ago, and Dave Dalenberg. And that's going to be pretty wild and interesting. We're literally just landing in cattle ranches and old outback pubs, and God knows what it's going to be like. But we're going to take a pee bottle for that one because there's going to be a lot of time on a plane. 4 of us in a tiny 172, just taking turns trying to take shots. Which, yeah, but I'm really looking forward to it. It's literally my first trip out of Tassie in a year. In terms of anywhere significant to go and shoot. So I'm not holding my breath in case something happens, but at the moment I'm booked to go. I haven't actually booked the ticket back yet because I'm just hedging my best to see if something pops up. I had a nice little package arrive in the mail. I've actually been waiting a long time for this one. Just arrived from Italy. I should remember, I actually took it down off my wall, the photo that I got this cost me, $250 to get mailed to me. It's the hand-blown trophy from Italy that I got invited to. They had an exhibition and a huge big like a week-long festival and they actually say that the only way you get one of these is to arrive in Italy and pick it up yourself, or you don't get it. And I was so excited to go. I was actually, you know what a great opportunity for a world trip. And then of course COVID came and shut it down. I tried to figure around it. So they said, you can have it, but it'll cost you $250. I was like, I spent 3 months just going in. That's a nice idea. But then again, I thought, you don't get them every day. So it was the biggest aerial photography contest in the world, the Siena Drone Awards. It's called the Drone Awards, but it's actually open to any sort of aerial photography. Drone's only part of it. So I had an event called Phoenix Rising, which I haven't got in front of me at the moment, but it's got a great story about the regeneration of the world and a very interesting part of the world that was turned into a toxic dust bowl that's now kind of being regenerated, and for migratory birds and art installations and all sorts of things. It's a good sort of story. And Jim Pico, who was on the show, I don't know, half a year ago now, he actually won the whole thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm telling you what I'm going to be doing because I'm not going to be here because of that. So next week I'll be in the Tarkine, and the week after I'll be somewhere over South Australia. There's a chance I might be able to come on the show for that one. We'll see. But Luke and I are starting to get a little bit busier as things start opening up a little bit more. So we tag team last week. Me and Nick took that one, and it might be Luke and Nick next week. But
might even be solo if Nick finds something to shoot. So
yeah, I thought it was going to be solo last week. Then Nick put his hand up.
Yeah.
It was a really good show. Thanks again.
I think I might be away next week. So
I've also been busy editing portraits of Jan, who's on the show here. She's been knocking on the door saying, "Oh, I got any good shots of me from the workshop that Luke and I did on Bruny Island," and I think I did. She can tell me privately whether they're rubbish or not, but I kind of like them. Oh, thumbs up! There you go.
And I've been showing my folks around who've come over for a visit, which was quite nice, and did a bit of a Fagus festival, our own little Fagus shooting session. Well, I took all the photos and they just watched, of course. But we went up to Cradle Mountain and stayed at Waldheim. So Fagus is the native deciduous beech tree that is endemic to Tasmania and loses its leaves each year, and it's quite a feast for photographers. And then went to Mount Field after Cradle and went out there. So the Fagus is definitely turning at the moment. I think they've got the Fagus Week going at Cradle Mountain at the moment, which is an annual event that has a whole bunch of photographers come in and stay at the Discovery Holiday Park there and go out and do a whole bunch of activities. So that's always a lot of fun. And I think, Nick, you even popped in on Monday night and caught up with everyone. Our friends Mika and Matt were there, as well as a whole bunch of other great people. It would have been a fantastic thing. I should really try and get there next year. Absolutely. So there's plenty happening down here in Tassie. Loic, have you been able to get out on some shoots as well yourself?
Not too much in nature, I guess. I've been doing a lot of commercial work. And also my son's getting into mountain biking at the moment. So we tend to spend a lot of weekends, riding trails and getting the gear right. That's been keeping me busy. But I went last time. I was in the blue tier just to get some footage. There's a campaign going on up there about the tree ferns and bunnings, and so I was up there getting some shots and some videos to help the campaign.
Can you elaborate on that campaign a little bit, Lau?
They basically Louise is running the main thing from up there, and
Blue Derby Wild.
Yeah, Blue Derby Wild, she's basically highlighting that there's still a lot of logging going on, despite all the tourism push, in particular with mountain biking, which is great. But she's there, reminding people that a lot of that stuff is happening just next to the mountain bike trails, and people are not necessarily aware of it.
I might grab her details off you, like. I was up there 10 days ago and shot some beautiful footage that kind of similar to what's behind you, actually. Beautiful, stunning, misty morning in the rainforest, right next to and over at the top of the areas that are meant to be logged. So, and I did that deliberately for the campaign and just off top of my own bat while I was there. So, and everyone told me Louise is a person to pass it on to. So I'll connect with you after the show on that one.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Well, I guess now that we've got you on here, Loic, it would be great to, I guess, formally introduce you and also go through a bit about yourself and your background and what the Tarkine means to you. And I think anyone that's in Tassie in the photography area would know Loic just for how long he's been in the game for down here, and has been he's just a lovely guy to get along with, and you also helped kick off Wild Island Gallery and a few other things like that. So always been very active in the industry down here. And so how long have you been shooting, taking photos and been down here in Tassie?
I've been taking photos for, I guess, 30 years or more. I've been in Tassie for 20 odd years, I guess. I'm from France originally. Yeah, I spent for 4 years in Brisbane initially, and then the rest of the time in Tassie. And soon after my arrival in Tassie, I was kind of introduced to the Tarkine in a big way, I guess, because there was the Tarkine book that was being organized and then published by Rob Purvis from WWF, and he was funding the book privately. And so a bunch of photographers were invited to, to go and explore the Tarkine and gather photos. And on the back of that, a selection of the images were made and the book published. And that's, if you can get your hands on it, it's just a beautiful book. Sort of
looks like Nick has got his hands on it, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he has.
I'll try and I'll have to talk and show it, otherwise I won't show up on YouTube. But I'll see if I can.
There we go.
People can see that, all right?
Yeah.
But it's going in and out with my virtual. I've got to show my face as well, I think.
Had it right before. But,
anyway, look, there it is. Yeah. Oh no, there we go. It's a beautiful. The cover of this is actually.
Is that Ted Mead shot?
It's one of the most beautiful rainforest shots I've ever seen.
Yeah, I've seen it used a lot of places too. It's very, very powerful. It's beautiful. Look like sassafras trees. They are sassafras, I think.
Look, it's the whole book is magnificent, but the cover, if you can get it, you'll fall in love with it. It's just the most sublime image by Ted Mead, who's one of the fathers of landscape photography down here, I guess. But the whole thing is just wonderful. It was produced in 2004, Loic?
I think we shot in October 2003, something like that, mostly. The book was published probably in 2004.
Yep, 2004. There's a slipcase version of the book as well, which is a bit harder to get hold of, but I've got one of those as well. Unfortunately, I wasn't involved with it because I'd only picked up a camera that year, 2003, and so
That's probably the year we met in the walls of Jerusalem, I think.
Actually, you're right, Loic. Yeah, that's right. We came across each other, and you were with Ian Wallace, weren't you?
Ian Wallace.
Yeah.
And there we were chatting somewhere in the heart of the walls, and this giant was coming down the mountain towards us. And that was our first meeting, I remember.
No, it was fascinating for me because you guys obviously knew what you're doing, and I didn't. And I think actually my camera was out of service, and so I'd picked up a Canon AE1 or something like that, some sort of film slide thing. I was experimenting with that, but I know Ian had a Mamiya, yeah, and I was just fascinated, and that was the first time I'd ever seen graduated neutral density filters as well, and so I watched very closely what he was doing and got a few ideas. So but that was I've met quite a few people out and about in the wilderness for the first time, and I guess it'll be the same for most of us.
Yeah. Didn't you meet Luke in the walls as well?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, I mean,
same sort of scenario, big man just sort of coming down the mountain towards, and that must be Nick. Yeah.
Actually, that's true. We did meet in the walls. But we teed that one up though.
Yeah, that's true.
We knew each other beforehand, but just online.
Yeah.
And it's developed into a beautiful relationship ever since.
Well, it must be the place to meet people. So if anyone's wanting to meet other photographers, just head into the walls, and you never know who you might find there. And, it's great to have you with us, Loic. And in terms of your time in the Tarkine, I guess that would have been is that the actual first time you went to the Tarkine when you photographed that book in 2003?
Yeah, it was because, I moved here permanently in 2002. So 2003 was the first time from memory. It was, big introduction. Spent a couple of weeks, camping all around the Tarkine, with a bunch of photographers. There were writers. So it was a really interesting project to be part of. And yeah, the result, is this beautiful book. And yeah, since then, obviously, people have been pushing for more recognition of the Tarkine and try to increase the protection of this, amazing area, which is, I guess, pretty remote, even by Tassie standards. It's a good 5 hours drive from Hobart. And it is just unbelievably beautiful and precious. And yet it's, as you've discussed before, the protection is pretty poor. So a lot of people have been working, behind the scenes and on the front line, trying to increase the awareness of what this area is. And yeah, so I mean, in more recent times, there was the Tarkine in Motion, or what is it called now?
After takayna.
And so I had been several times, but then I think that the first Tarkine in Motion a few years ago, whenever it was, I remember, Paul, you were there as well. And again, I mean, a different event. It wasn't for a book, but similar idea. A bunch of people went in the Tarkine, a bunch of artists. So there were photographers, filmmakers, poets, painters, dancers, all sorts of things, and tried to create some art and connect and produce something to promote the area and just to raise awareness. So that was a great event to be part of as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, it's and you also do the odd workshop out there as well?
Yeah, over the years, I've been involved in a few workshops, a lot with Rob Lakers. I'll show some images a bit later. We've done a sort of an aerial workshop based in Tarkine Wilderness Lodge. We've done workshops at the Tiger Ridge from Tarkine Trails, which is this sort of camp up high on a ridge. Yeah, and probably a couple of others I'm not thinking of at the moment, but yeah, so there's been different types of involvement, and always a pleasure to be in that area photographing.
Awesome. Well, we might even maybe get you to share your screen now, and we can go through some of the pictures that you've taken through there, and maybe give us some of your thoughts and feelings about the experiences you've had there.
Sure. So let's start the slideshow.
Yeah.
So I guess the first shot was from that book involvement in 2003. We were, so that's the Pieman River. It's actually the Donaldson River, but getting onto the Pieman River there. And we were on this little tinny, just, having a look around and trying to find things to photograph and just enjoying ourselves, I guess. Beautiful day. And we'd been exploring the Donaldson for a while and were going back to the Pieman. And suddenly, about 5 meters above our heads, this wedge-tailed eagle just flew above us in the same direction we were going. So, and it's like, what is going on? And 2 seconds later, 2 wedge-tailed eagles, flew above us, and they were chasing it down the river and attacked it, just in front of us. And the poor thing just fell in the river and started swimming to shore. So that was quite an incredible sight. And we did follow it for, to the bank where it was trying to get out, and it finally got out and was, looking pretty sheepish and wet. And there's actually a photo taken by Ralph Ashton, who was the coordinator of the book, that ended up in the book. And I think that was the first digital camera I saw at the time. It was Nikon D100 that he was using.
Wow.
And terrible light conditions in the banks, but he managed to pull a really nice shot, whereas, my shot on a dirty old Velvia was just, unusable. So yeah, that was quite interesting as well.
Oh, sort of sums it up, really, just to be able to see that sort of sight. You just don't get it anywhere frequently or anything like that. Because it's such a wilderness area, and the fact that you can see something like that happening just sort of sums it up. The area, the place, the remoteness, the wildlife, and the forest.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's such a big, excuse me, big wild place. And as you would know, as nature landscape photographers, when you're out there, there's always something happening, whether it's with the light or the elements or the wildlife. And that's certainly something that's imprinted in my memory as a very unique thing. And I don't think I'll see that ever again. So although I managed to capture that kind of pretty dodgy shot, I feel very privileged to have seen that. But you're right, it's only when you're out and about in places like this that you can experience these things, and it just highlights the incredible value of these places. So moving on to more recent times, so that was the first Tarkine in motion, or art for takayna, as it's called now. And so this is King's Run. I don't know, what's the name now? Did they change the name, Paul?
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. I was actually talking to Andy Sculthorpe about it just a week or so ago, because I asked him nicely if I could get permission to go back out there, which I said I could have. So this area, everyone probably doesn't know, has actually been handed back to the Indigenous people of Tasmania now. It was an incredible ceremony to be a part of, and very rare and unusual event to happen in modern times. I mean, Loic knows a lot of the story too, but it was a fella called Jeff King, and his family basically were the original family to own this property all the way from where go. And he was, a cattle drover and a pretty stalwart part of the community there. But over his later period of life, he started sort of moving towards a lot more of a conservation sort of value approach to using his land. And he started running devil tours on the land that Davis had a lot to do with. And he ended up gifting the land to the Indigenous people in his will, and he passed away, and the land has now been handed back. And so it's an Indigenous management now, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, it's certainly a special place. So as part of Tarkine in Motion, we spent some time there with a bunch of people, and that day you were there, Paul. I remember, and I think I'll be showing photos that you've taken as well in different times. So I'll go to the next one.
You took a 360 photo.
So I'll show it actually.
Oh, that's right, you did too. Yeah,
it's interesting. I'll go back. So that shot was actually a sort of opportunistic shot, because I was actually waiting for the light to be right, and my tripod was actually right up there. That's actually quite a big rock. It doesn't look like it.
Yeah, it is.
And so I climbed all the way up there and put my tripod ready to take a 360 panorama, and I decided just to wander back and just wait, and turned around and I thought, ooh, that's nice, and took this shot handheld, and it's sharp enough. It's a bit dodgy, but it's okay. The light was pretty low, and then so I might actually show the panorama now, so you can see what I shot just a couple of minutes later. So I'm not sure what you can see with the screen sharing, but
that's working well.
So if you want to see it for yourself, if you Google Tasmania 360 Tarkine, you should be able to find this one. And anyway, you can look around up and down. And so, I was standing over there when I took that previous shot, looking back. So that's the story of this one. And just later that same evening, as the sun, had set, we started taking photos of Luana and Jean, two Palawa women. So I took a range of shots, and Paul, you took some beforehand, or anyway, pretty much
Yeah,
around
earlier.
the same kind of, earlier. And so anyway, to me, that's a sort of a lovely memory to be part of it. And also technically, everything kind of worked well, and the moon was there in the background, and so it's just kind of a special moment for me. And then what else? All right, so now moving on to one of the workshops that Rob Lakers and I run a few years ago, which was a workshop based at the Tarkine Wilderness Lodge, which has been sold recently, I believe. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, it has.
I don't know if it's going to keep running as a accommodation. Not sure. Anyway, it's in the northeast corner of the Tarkine. And so we used the lodge as a base, not only to explore the forest by foot, but also every morning we had a helicopter that would take us, above the magnificent forest. And you can see that on my car here, that's a drum of aviation fuel.
Aviation fuel, yeah.
So that was quite an interesting setup.
Who did you fly with, like?
It was Greg Ross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a lot there. Yeah.
I can't remember who he was flying with at the time, but so he stayed with us for a few days. It was basically part of the workshop. So that's just a photo of the Tarkine Lodge, with incredible clear skies with 20 billion stars. But the real reason why we were there was to take off early in the morning in particular, and capture the forest in that area, northeast of the Tarkine. And again, it was really a workshop, teaching people how to take better photos, but there was also a bit of an ulterior motive to capture images that could be used, for campaigns, which is.
We just did an R44 or something bigger, or?
It was a R44, I think, from memory.
So you'd have to take turns, I guess, because you only get a few of you in there at a time.
Yeah, so we took turns basically. We had quite a few hours of flying time all up. So, and we were basically right on the edge of the area we wanted to photograph. So that worked out well. And
not a lot of flight time to get here.
Pardon?
Not a lot of flight time to get to these spots.
No, not too much. No, that was pretty much right there, on the doorstep, so to speak.
Fantastic.
And we had great conditions.
I'm gonna say you got lucky, because it doesn't present like that every day.
No, but if you know Rob Blakers, you know that he's he has a sixth sense for when the weather is going to be suitable.
Yeah, he does.
So so no, that all worked well.
Look at that.
Fantastic.
So that was a pretty special time.
God, it almost looks like snow.
Yeah, it was pretty thick. And tricky because obviously it was still low light, the sun was barely rising. So it'd be interesting to do it now, with different cameras, with image stabilization and better ISO capabilities. But nevertheless, they're good images. And then that's Corina. So the Paiman River at Corina. And so that's the southern edge of the Tarkine. So not really wilderness, but I thought I'd put that shot in because, well, I like it. And everything kind of lined up for that one. I just had to get up a bit early, but the rest kind of, just happened. And it's a beautiful area. And I think for people...
you on the punt, were you, to get that on?
No, there was a sort of a little jetty.
There's a jetty on the other side. So I think,
Yeah, I think I've got the feeling the jetty's gone now, this particular one.
Yeah, I think that would make sense that you'd be on the punt for that shot, because I've got a shot that I'm going to show soon that is actually in a similar angle of that. So,
what do you mean by the punt? The actual?
Oh, the barge that goes across the river.
No,
they
it wasn't.
leave it.
It definitely wasn't the barge. It was a
okay.
jetty. Yeah.
There definitely was a jetty there.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
I don't know if it's still there or not. But
No, I don't think there is.
Probably not. Yeah, I've got some vague memory that somebody mentioned it was gone. So again,
May have used that as a boat ramp for a while, and then they moved it up maybe further.
Possibly. Yeah, and so I guess for people, because the Tarkine is big and wild, and yeah, ideally you want to go and walk and camp, for several days, but an area like Carina is very accessible even to families, so it could be a good introduction for people who've never been there and are not so sure about camping out in the wild, because at Carina that and there's accommodation, or you can bring caravan, and it's a sort of a good introduction, I guess, to the Tarkine. There's lovely rainforest and gallery forest on the edge of the Pineland River, and the river itself, it's a stunning place.
There's very, very pure rainforest along the edge of that river, and there's still living human pines that you literally go past. And
absolutely, yeah.
The Arcadia has incredible history. It's the oldest running human pine boat in the world for commercial work at the moment. And it's a gorgeous trip, hour and a half down to the coast.
So the trip
on Monday.
Yeah, the trip is fantastic. I mean, when you get to the head of the Pineland River, the coast is just incredible. To the left, you've got conical rocks, which are these granitic rocks, a bit like the east coast of Tassie, very round and friendly. And then on the right hand side, on the northern side, you've got this jagged, wild coast. It's just the contrast is just phenomenal, and very special place. What have we got next? That's from rainforest, kind of in the Waratah area. So that was another workshop Rob Blackes and I did with a bunch of people, and I guess I wanted to show that shot because the Tarkine is full of these little unnamed waterfalls, and the beauty is just incredible. And if you can go and spend some time there and just have a wander and explore, you can find these jewels of places, and it's just very special. And that's same area as probably 50 meters away from the previous shot. So, it's just very rich and well worth exploring. And the rainforest is, you've got to be careful not to get lost, obviously, especially in untracked places like this. But at the same time, it's not too dangerous. You just can have a lovely time and discover incredible things. No, what else?
Sure.
That was another workshop we were running at Tiger Ridge with Tarkine Trails, and I just like that shot because it kind of summed up, what it was all about. Just kind of losing yourself in the forest, and it was just you, nature, and your camera, and trying to.
Do you know who's running it now? I used to run workshops up there as well, but I'm not quite sure who's managing it now.
So I think it's Trek Tours Australia who bought the business from Greg Irons. So I think if you Google, I'm pretty sure it's them, and they do have various kind of experiences throughout Australia, like the Larapinta Trail and things like that.
Gotcha.
And they have a few in Tassie, not just the Tarkine one. And they're a great operator, and they do things properly and ethically. So Yeah.
Good.
I did their trip in the Larapinta, and it was really, really good. So I'm sure that their Tarkine experience is fantastic as well.
Yeah. From what I've heard, yeah, they do a great job. And I mean, I guess talking about Tiger Ridge, mentioning people like Davis, and I think you spoke about Davis briefly last time, and because
he's worth another mention.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, he's got such a long so he and Rob Fairley, founded Tiger Trails over 20 years ago, I guess.
Yeah, about 20 years ago, yeah.
And the idea was to have a sustainable business in the Tarkine, and to show that it wasn't just all about mining and logging. And so incredible vision, and they spent several years doing their thing and taking people in the wild. And then Greg Irons from Bonorong took over, and then now it's with Tractor Tasmania. But Davis has been involved with the Tarkine, and I met him when we did the book in 2003, and he's a special guy. Anybody who's met him would know exactly. And he's still involved. With
the kind of guy you forget meeting.
Pardon?
Not the kind of guy you'd forget meeting.
No. And he's still involved in doing, well, you were talking about wilderness therapy, so he still does that kind of stuff, and has got great projects. So yeah, it's
Wild Walkers is one of the main things he's involved with now.
Yeah. So yeah, what else? I can show you. Oh, there we go. That's I guess that's the idea of trying to protect the place from greed, I suppose. That's sorry, I'm not sure if that's okay to to show images like that, but I thought I should.
No, go for it.
Because that's really I guess what we're trying to prevent, just senseless destruction for a quick buck. And that's why so many people are passionate about the place and about Tasmania in general, because this still goes on, unfortunately, logging of old growth forests. So yeah, that's I guess that's the main reason. Let's move on. I don't know, you want to see some more panoramas? I can show you.
How do you create your 360 panoramas? I've never taken one.
There's different ways, but basically you take, the way I do it is using a fisheye lens or a very wide angle lens, and you take several shots around that overlap. And ideally you should do it with a special tripod head, so you don't get parallax errors between the shots, otherwise they won't stitch very well. And yeah, then there's software that helps you stitch everything together.
You're sort of one of the early adopters of 360 panoramic photography in the state, Loic, and I mean, times have moved to a point where it's very accessible for anyone, because you can get these 360-degree cameras that just take it all in one shot. But but there's certainly a real craft to getting good 360 photos. You said,
for sure.
You talked about just for those that are watching that may not be aware, you're talking about the special tripod head. What's and the fact that parallax errors. Can you just explain how that works for people that might not know?
Sure, I guess so. Parallax, the best way to explain it is that if you turn your head and you look at at things around you, if you do have parallax, then things will move in relation to each other as you turn your head, and obviously that's not good if you're talking about photography that you need to stitch. So that's what you're trying to avoid, and to avoid that, you need to have your camera that rotates around what's called the nodal point of the lens. And so the tripod head helps to do that. So you have to get special panoramic head, and then you have to calibrate it, make sure that it does rotate around the nodal point. itself, and then it just makes things a lot easier when you stitch the images together. So yeah, it's sort of a geeky thing because it is pretty involved technically. Even if there are 360 like one shot or two shot 360 cameras around, but I can still get better results from a 6-shot panorama like this one, or 8-shot panorama compared to quick solutions.
Well, it's also the higher megapixel 360 cameras are very, 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 very expensive. So you can grab your 45 megapixel SLR or mirrorless camera and take very high resolution 360 shots doing it the way that you do it. I've had experience with the 360 cameras, and Luke has as well, and they do a very good job, but they're not nearly as good as what you get from a normal camera that's shot in the fashion that you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, they've got their place. It's there's also all sorts of uses, obviously, but yeah. And
what sort of got you into it, and how do you set up a shot knowing it's going to work well? Because obviously you've got a huge potential contrast range to work through going 360 in terms of exposure.
Yeah,
you have to
definitely
shoot HDR the whole time, or do you just pick a spot down the middle and work it back later? Or
I mean, I think the first thought is, for people who don't know, it's like, oh well. Often people say, oh yeah, you should go on top of that mountain, it'll be a great 360, and it's like, well, thanks, it's sweet, but you don't want everything to be in the background. You need some foreground as well, so you have a sense of depth. So that's for choosing the point, you want things interesting in the foreground as well as the background. So here, that's Sarah and rocks in the Tarkine on the coast. And you pick the spot because everything's interesting, basically. And that's the beauty of 360 photography, is that the whole environment is interesting. So you take a 360 shot and people can look around for themselves rather than crafting a composition for a still image. Yeah. And then obviously you need a camera with a good dynamic range, so you don't have to do HDR or exposure blending the whole time. But it's doable.
When did you take that particular panorama, though?
Quite a few years ago.
Before the fires.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Yeah.
It looks a bit more barren these days, although some of them back. Yeah, it's certainly coming back, but you've got a lot of skeletons of scrubby trees still there, which actually make for some really interesting photography. But I reckon some people that are watching now will go, oh, I might use that as a bit of a reference, because Sarah Ann Rocks is really a hot spot for seascape photography in the Tarkine, and gets talked about a fair bit. And with your photo here, I reckon they can get a pretty good idea of just how special it is.
Yeah, it's an incredible spot, just purely for photography. I mean, just the rock formations and the ocean. It's just incredible. I mean, you could spend a week there just taking photos, and you wouldn't run out of things to photograph.
Yeah. You were there on a pretty calm day.
Yeah, no, it was lovely, and will it work? Yeah. So the other interesting thing with these panoramas is obviously they're interactive, so you can actually have things to click on, have information, other photos. That's one of the middens, if you can see that. So anyway, they're good fun. And that's about it, I think. Yeah. So on to you, Luke.
Awesome. Thanks so much for showing us through all of that, Loic, and
pleasure.
Yeah, very much appreciated. seeing all of the adventures that you've been up to through those parts. Certainly a lot of years worth of work there. So yeah, that's really nice. Really nice.
We just had a question, Luke, from Tim Lashbrook on the chat, just asking what safety precautions do you guys take when entering these areas? Do you carry EPIRBs, for example? Well, I guess we could all probably answer that, but yes is the answer. I carry a PLB, as they're known these days, a personal locator beacon. I've actually changed the one I had. I had one that was just simply an emergency beacon, and I know Luke's done the same, and we've now got integrated emergency beacons in a GPS. So it suits, instead of taking two devices, we've got a single device that has capabilities. Luke's showing it up now. You have to.
Yeah, this is what it looks like here. It's just nice little handheld unit, but yeah, does a hell of a lot of different things in one little package like that. Probably a bit bigger and heavier than some smaller PLBs, but being able to get a message out is pretty priceless in certain situations where just a simple SMS message can say so much in just a couple sentences. It's quite remarkable when you think about it. So definitely that's probably more of the extreme end of things, but even just a standard little PLB is normally what, $200 or $300, and for a device that can save your life, and that lasts normally up to 7 years or so, maybe 10 years. It's a pretty good investment. So that's of course if there's no mobile reception. If you've got mobile reception, then that's always better to go with first, of course, and 000. But otherwise,
most of the Tarkine you don't get much of any, but on the northwest coast, in particular around Arthur River and Ceran Rocks, there is a reasonable amount of reception and patches of the Tarkine Drive. But generally speaking, if you're heading out into the remote areas, you're kind of on your own.
Yeah,
I've got Lukey's hand-me-down PLB. We've already upgraded to one of these fancy devices, so I'm pretty old school. I just have a little one, but it's super light and small. Luke's the best shopper I know for equipment, so if he's ever letting go of something, he's probably so far ahead of the curve that whatever I get off him that's he's used before is probably still current. So
I don't know if I was ahead of curve enough, I wouldn't have had to buy a different one to start with. But anyway,
they are very good. The one that Luke and I have is a Garmin InReach device, and it does require a subscription. They're not too expensive, the subscriptions. You can sort of subscribe to them ad hoc for a month, which is a bit more expensive, or you can do an annual plan. So I paid $20 a month on an annual plan, and it means that anywhere I go that's out of reception, I can send either a custom text message or a preset message. I've got a limit on the custom ones before I've got to pay extra, but I can send unlimited presets. So when I was away in the last few days, I actually used it every night, 3 out of the 4 nights, to let my wife know that I was okay. And it sends a link in that message to a map and shows her exactly where I am. So that's really handy. And you can actually set them up to track you as well. So you can have it tracking you in real time with points every 10 minutes or 30 minutes or something like that. And people can follow along at home. If you go on a trip and they're worried about you or want to just share in your adventure, you can actually set it up so it will ping every 10 or 30 minutes. I think it depends on your plan, and we'll actually plot it on the map. So it's a pretty cool device, and it can do everything else. It's got a torch. It's got sunrise and sunset times, and for the location you're at, it obviously tracks you wherever you go. They're just a really good idea, but you can get the same in a normal GPS device, but the one that we've got just simply combines the emergency beacon and the messaging capability with the GPS. So it sort of made sense not to have to carry too many devices.
Yeah, they're capable of doing really good weather information and updates as well.
Yep.
Super handy. So Luke and Andrew had theirs out in the Tarkine a few weeks ago when we were back there shooting, and they were super handy to have. and good peace of mind, like especially when we were super duper remote and didn't have we weren't independent on how we were getting in and out of the place. So it was really good to be able to connect with the people that were getting us out. So for peace of mind, I'll tell you that.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's always a good idea to think about how you're going to communicate with people and get those messages out there so you can stay safe. And sometimes it goes the other way. You might know you're safe, but they don't know that you're safe. So you need to also let other people know that so that they don't send in a search party unnecessarily. So it goes both ways there. Cool. Well, yeah. Well, I'll might as well share my screen now and go through some of the shots that I've got here. I've got a few that I've put away from various different trips, but most of them are from the later trip that I've done there, over Easter. So I'll just share the screen now. All right, so hopefully you can see the map here. Obviously, just to for those that weren't here on the last episode on the Tarkine, it's well worth watching that one. And Nick has a very, very in-depth view of the Tarkine in terms of all the different areas and things like that. But just as a reminder, the Tarkine area is basically the north west coast of Tasmania in this sort of area here, and I guess generally stretches from, what do they normally say, from the Pieman here all the way up through to around Arthur River is generally that the coastal stretch, and then it cuts in quite a fair way here and around.
So kind of like Murchison Highway to the east and the Pieman to the south and the Arthur to the north is very rough.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a big chunk of Tasmania, and a lot of it is still wild, and that's why we're all wanting it to stay that way. So I'll just flick over to Lightroom now. So hopefully you can see that's changed, and now you've just got a shot from the edge of the world. And so I guess as I started exploring the Tarkine area, I think a lot of us probably start with either the Corinna end or the Arthur River end, and then work into the more in-depth areas. But my first taste of the Tarkine was actually up at Arthur River. And if you're ever on a trip to Tassie and sort of wanting to get a really quick taste of the Tarkine, then going to a place like Arthur River or Sarah Ann Rocks, which I'll also feature later, is probably a really good way of doing that, because I know that often people don't have a lot of time to spend in places because they're wanting to see everything as you do. So that's a really awesome place, and it's called the the Edge of the World. And it certainly feels like that when you get all of the big winds coming in and all of that. So and you can see here that the coastline's obviously quite windswept and a lot of drama and mood here. And there's always this beautiful rock in the distance. I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can see the cursor there in the back there. Just a few other quick things that I did around Kuta Rocks, some of the different aspects that you can see through there. I think that's maybe on West Point or something like that. So yeah, this beautiful rock, and it changes quite a bit. Some of it's lichen encrusted, and some of it's actually quite a bit more rugged and hardy, that kind of thing. So depending on where on the coast you actually are. So they were very early photographs I took a long time ago. More recent visits, I've spent a fair bit more time down the Pieman area around Corinna. The Pieman's an absolutely fantastic photographic subject, I suppose, in its own right. So if you're staying at Corinna, you're basically staying right on the Pieman River. And if you're lucky enough to get a beautiful, calm morning, the reflections that you can get can be quite astounding and really have a lot of a lot of presence, I suppose, to the photographs. And especially if you get on the Arcadia, the ship there, the boat, the wooden boat that we were just talking about, Hugh and Pine boat, you can get some really, really awesome still calm shots as you're going down the river. Another thing that you can also see, which is very commonly photographed and used in some tourism stuff, is these steps up to Lovers Falls. It's a bit of an Instagrammer's paradise, that sort of scene, and you might see people even standing on the steps reflected in the water and that kind of thing. So it's and then basically up that walk is actually a walking track that takes you to the waterfall called Lovers Falls, and that depending on how much rain you've got, it's either flowing well or flowing not much. When I was there, it wasn't flowing much, so I don't have a shot of Lovers Falls, but definitely a great spot to check out when you visit. that's just some examples of the kind of reflections that you can get along the coastline there, along the river there. So really beautiful spot. This is a shot that I took of the Arcadia. So this was we were just talking a bit earlier about the punt, and I actually did take this from the punt. Well, there's a barge that actually takes cars across the river, like I guess a mini ferry, and then that's docked up on this side, and you can actually get a shot of the Arcadia from there. And so that's the boat with my friend Rob, who was on the show a few weeks ago. He was actually shining the light behind just to create this sort of effect, and given the moody conditions, everything sort of came together really nicely. So you can also get a little bit creative out there if that's the sort of thing you're after as well, because there's not much going on there in the way of getting it bothering you. And this is actually a shot of the punt going across the river here, just to give a bit of an idea of how that all works. Obviously, I didn't have not as much calm reflections going at the time, but yeah, and so that's what it looks like actually on the Arcadia. This is actually coming out. Looks like we're almost getting towards Pieman Heads in the distance here. And then the guys that skipper the boat are always great to have a chat to as well. Always have a lot of character, and they often let you into the wheelhouse out the front. And yeah, it's just the experience of going down there on the Arcadia is just it's a wonderful experience in its own right, and it's also the way that I guess you're getting into some of the good stuff, as you might say. And so to be able to go down the Pieman, you can actually get off there and then start to explore some of the coastline around there. And so north of the Pieman is actually some amazing coastline, and it's hard to get to, but it's worth the effort if you're that way inclined. Very, as we're saying, very remote and very hard to get to areas out there. So you obviously need to know what you're doing. Luckily, I've been able to work out what I'm doing over a period of years. This particular shot, I just really loved having the flowers in the foreground leading to the crazy rocks in the background, I guess. And that was an extreme wide angle shot, actually taken with a 10mm lens, just playing around with that. Here's another one as well. Just trying for, you go to these places and you always photograph them in the same way. And so I always try and think of how can I get something that's a little bit different, representing a scene that you might have seen many times in a different way. And so this was just a bit of playing around. Then, other times you get much nicer conditions where you get some beautiful light. And it's always worth seeing where all of the wave action's happening, and then lining up the sun with an object. In this case, the setting sun's setting through this little notch in the rock here, creating a sunstar pattern, which I always look to create. I know Nick hates those, but no, I
don't hate
fun.
them.
So that's one good, I guess, one unique thing. You don't often on the east coast of Australia get many chances to shoot sunsets over the sea, but obviously you can do that on the west coast of Tassie, and so that's always a bit of a novelty as well, being able to do that. And so getting shots like that at sunset's quite nice. And that's pretty much the same spot, but looking in the other direction. I think even on the same night, just sort of showing how beautiful light can be, and the tortured rocks of the coastline with the all of the soft waves. I guess I've softened them down in a longer exposure there. But really does show the beauty. There's a term here we use in Tassie called a brutal beauty, which is a bit of a tongue twister if you say too many times, but it's definitely a apt term, I suppose, for this particular coastline, because it's can be quite wild and rugged. It's a bit more, I think, later that evening, more into looking into the blue hour and focusing more on the foreground. And just another probably different edit of that sort of scene there. So that's the coastline there. Then moving on to Sarah Ann Rocks. Some of these are in various levels of edit, but I just thought I'd put a few shots aside just to show, what Sarah Ann Rocks is like, and how nice it is as a photography location. There's all sorts of interesting compositions and, leading lines and floral subjects, I suppose, as well. That's some pig face there growing along some sort of root system on the ground. And yeah, just a whole bunch of leading lines and very interesting features that you can use to create some really impactful imagery. And I actually found it more interesting shooting the area inland from the coast other than on the coast itself. I think that there's quite a bit, even just in these sort of, I guess, heaps and mounds of, harsh rock that you can really create from that. So that's really what I enjoyed photographing. I did some black and whites as well while I was there, just to sort of highlight some of the other, like the light just coming off of the rocks, and I found them really nice and graphic as well, just sort of showing the slabs and how angular some of the rocks actually are. So that came up quite nicely. And this was, I think, actually out at the other location on the coast. So I sort of every now and then we'll flick it over into black and white and give it a bit of a go, just to see what's going on there. It's just trying to see if I've got anything else from that particular area. I've found a few more from the coastline where I was looking at before. And so this is another one, just showing using water movement to kind of create some leading lines into different subjects and areas, and the beautiful kelp that's there along the shorelines, and also at lower tides you get really beautiful rocks and things that are in the water there as well. And then I was lucky enough to find a little crevice there, which was very infrequently filled with water. So I waited there for a good period of time to get that. But this that sort of shows you. I didn't have too many shots, but you can see how, like, sometimes we're getting waves actually breaking almost over this rock in the distance, and that'd have to be a good 10 meters tall. Yep. I would have thought.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
So it's so it's pretty impressive watching those come in, and you're relatively safe where you're standing. Although here you really wouldn't want to be where I am in this shot when the conditions aren't right. But definitely nice. Always nice just to photograph some of the beautiful plants that are around as well. And there was another one here that I was going to show as well. That's probably it from that particular spot. And this was back at Arthur River with that rock that was out in the distance, and just some of the beautiful light that was hitting it on one of the. Actually, looks like it might be more of a sunrise there, given where the light's hitting it. But
called Australia Rock, that one.
Oh, is Australia Rock? There you go.
Yeah, and if you go back to the shot you just had, that's Church Rock in the very far distance there. Okay, yeah. Where Loic took the 360 pano from.
Oh, right. Well, there you go.
It is a long, long way away from there. Right. But you've got it sticking up there nicely.
I didn't even know that that was that you wouldn't think it was that big or that far away from that particular shot. So it says a lot about the size of it then if it's showing up in that particular frame.
Yep.
So what I'll do now is I'll just that's some of the sort of scenes that I was able to put together quickly for the more coastal areas, although I will go back to the coast a little bit later. I'll just show a few from the actual forest. This was one where we actually went into the one of the blockades that they have, one of the camps. I don't know if you can remember what the name of the camp was that we visited, but some of the areas were pretty astounding through there, and that's sort of the kind of vegetation that they're trying to protect from logging, basically, these beautiful old growth forests. And yeah, just just pretty pristine sort of environment there. And massive trees and all sorts of ferns, and just a very sort of lush environment, really. This is I think this is in Kew. No, I think this was actually closer to Corinna, this one. But the forest is there's so much amazing forest there. You can almost just pull over on the side of the road and walk in safely and see what you can find. But there's also a bit of leatherwood there, and some beautiful sort of ferny grove there, which is pretty stunning little spot. So so definitely, I mean, I have to admit, I probably have shot a lot more on the coast in the Tarkine than I have actually in the forests. And I think for some in some part that's because, you know, the forests are a very chaotic environment, and it is a bit of a challenge to actually take a forest photo that you're actually happy with. And so when I do get one that I'm happy with, I'm pretty glad about it. So definitely a skill that I'm looking to develop more as in my photography, and certainly look up to guys like Nick in his ability to be able to capture a beautiful forest image as well. So what I wanted to do now is move on to some shots that I took over Easter, and that was at a very, very remote location on the coast of the Tarkine, and there's some real big pockets over there where there's actually quite a lot of just massive sand dunes that stretch all the way back into the sort of coastal vegetation. And I'd never really gotten right into.
Nick, do you know how long the stretch is? Is it 30 kilometers? Like it's a big stretch.
Yeah, it would. I'm just looking at. Yep, it'd be. I'm on Google Maps and looking at the scale of.
Yeah, I mean, you've got like all the way through here. There, so you've got like that's a big chunk of the coastline there.
Yeah, 30k. Yep.
Go from there to there, and you're looking at 33 kilometers. So 30 k's is pretty close, Paul. So I'd pay that. But yeah, there's definitely massive amount of coastline there to explore. That's you know, all just sheer wilderness. And apart from, I guess, the top end here, which I'm sure Nick covered very well last week, but week before last, where the four-wheel drives can actually access. And so we, you know, this particular area, because they're coming down from the Tema area, which is just up here. They follow the coast along, and they can go as far down as a place called Sea Devil Rivulet, which is just south of Sandy Cape. So it's down around here, and that was where we were based. And so beyond that, further south, the tracks were closed, and there wasn't any four-wheel drive access allowed beyond that point. And so it was really interesting to see the difference between the areas where the traffic was allowed versus the areas where it wasn't, and how the varying stages in degradation and impact on the landscape, or at least observable human impact from that regard. So, which I'll have a couple shots to show as well. But yeah, going back to the pictures. So and the other thing that's really astounding, and I'm a big fan of what I call creek on beach action, where you get beautiful tannin water coming out onto the beach, and you get some of that really happening nicely up on the east coast of Tassie, up around the Bay of Fires and north of there, but also out here on the west coast, it's very prolific. And you could say that there are more rivers going out actually there. It's some of the waterways are just humongous. So and this is actually Sea Devil Rivulet here, showing a large sand dune in the background, and just the beautiful clouds that we had on that day.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was
there's
magic.
all sorts of I mean, like those sort of places are you know, it's a very shoot by exploration, I suppose, and as a kind of photography, I find that very fulfilling when you can just wander around and you know, make your own compositions. And you know, it's very unlikely anyone's ever taken those shots before, because there's very few people that would have photographed there before. So although it's surprising that even though that's the case, you know, photographers tend to see things very similarly sometimes too, so you never can take that for granted.
Yeah, and the dunes and the creeks are actually quite ephemeral. I mean, the dunes move and shift and reveal different patterns and buried middens that come to the fore, and the creeks change course as to where they exit on the beach, and sometimes they just dry up before they get to the sea itself. And so yeah, it's always changing, and I don't think anyone can take the same shot twice in an area like that.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. But yeah, no, it's definitely certainly just having a look at what Paul photographed versus what I photographed. There was you know, just completely.
Well, we spoke to a guy who had actually been coming out there since 1979, and he spoke a lot about how the movement of the dunes, and I think there's been a largely eastern shift over time, where they're heading sort of more inland, So yeah, and someone like Bob Brown, who's been walking out there since 1973.
Well,
He would have a really good idea of how the larger kind of movements have happened, because it's a very dynamic landscape. The dunes, they're very fluid, and they're constantly moving.
Yeah, no, it's and there's a lot of little spots that you can sort of find, I suppose, if you explore and look at the maps and see where you can head out to. And there's a lot of just really interesting kind of features, I suppose, to some of the more eroded areas where there's a lot of exposed sand. You get these sort of almost dead forests, or almost with these amazing gnarled sort of. I mean, just the texture in some of these I guess old root systems that are exposed. I spend a good half an hour or so just getting low and trying different sort of, I guess, portraits or what have you of these sort of shapes, and getting some really interesting shots. But also found some old midden sites as well, which I was photographing actually with a new lens that I was borrowing at the time, which has been renounced recently, which is the Sony 14mm f1.8. And so I used that to photograph some of the ancient living sites, what I guess the white people refer to as midden sites, but the Tasman Aboriginal people really like to be referred to as living sites, because they're still they're an evidence of that some people have lived there in the past, and that culture is still continuing. So they like to think of it more as a current thing, and realistically, it's only a very short period of time ago that they would have been used in terms of human history. So it's quite remarkable to be on the country when you have Tasmanian Aboriginal elders walking around interpreting these places, and I like the idea of putting these locations in context of the stars, and kind of playing up on the I guess the how long lasting the actual civilization was out there, and using the stars to represent that sort of long passage of time, I suppose. So it was definitely a very powerful image or place to be out there, I suppose, in those sort of conditions. And another one just sort of showing, this is actually a moonrise over some of the dunes out there. It was just a really stunning place to be on your own out in that sort of environment. That's the Norfolk Range in the distance behind. And then in the morning had some really kind of I think of it like sort of sand sastrugi or something, where the sand's actually been carved out by the wind patterns, or the strong winds that whip over the top, and then getting that beautiful morning light sort of cast across them as well. So you can sort of see the vegetation behind it or in front of the dune system, and then the beach there in the distance. So
that's magic, mate. That's beautiful.
And then managed to find a kind of semi-distorted love heart, but tried my best with that. But yeah, also just really nice to be able to go through the dunes and find different patterns. And this is a shot that I still have to put together as a focus stack, but is pointing down towards a large dune in the distance there as well. And just some more of those patterns this time, more in I haven't edited this one properly yet for the distortion, but just showing the different erosion of the dunes. This was a stone, what we believe is a stone tool. We actually took Teresa Sainty back to this particular rock after we shot it, and just to sort of get her impression of it and that kind of thing.
Sharp.
And it was a pretty remarkable piece, actually. It was definitely a stone. So
I mean, we didn't touch it, obviously, but
no, we didn't.
Teresa being of Aboriginal descent, that's something they do allow themselves to do.
Yeah.
But certainly, if it's actually against the law, is my understanding. Is that right, Nick?
Yep. It is.
Yes.
Under the Aboriginal Relics Act, I think it's called, which is an old act, and it's pretty toothless, but it needs a huge update, and I think the Aboriginal community would agree with me on that. But yes, you can't take anything that is remotely like an Aboriginal artefact, including stones and shells from middens, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty special to come across something like that. And I think I had some more shots of it actually when Teresa was holding it and sort of having a look at it. But obviously without having someone that has more of an archaeological background, it's hard to say exactly. But yeah, still very special. I mean, there's pretty much little doubt in a place like that of how much activity there's been. This is actually naturally arranged in these patterns. It's almost like the sands lined up. That's like the little shell that covers off the opening of some of the other shells, and those shells look like, I think I had one here. Maybe I didn't put it in the end, but they're what do they call them? Paul, can you remember the name? Werner shells, I think they're called.
Werner, I think it is.
Yeah, and so that was one of their sort of prized seafoods shellfish that they were eating, and that's so each one of those represents someone's meal essentially, and just really enjoyed finding natural arrangements of those sort of things.
This is probably what, like half a kilometer inland?
Maybe? Yeah, it was very far inland. So, things would have had to have changed a fair bit for that. It wouldn't have been a very convenient place to go and take your food to eat in current times. So would have been really interesting. Just love this one too for showing the it's being sandblasted with all of the sand fragments and the specular highlights there next to the side, just showing I guess the action of the elements there.
Anyone want to buy a used lens?
Hey?
Anyone want to buy a used lens? It's been
no, that was totally like that thing. The lens that I was using has a lens hood that's about almost over 10 centimeters long. So there's nothing getting in there. So it's brilliant in the rain actually. But this is an example of one of the living sites there, which I found. This is actually further down. So this is actually on the coastline that's under threat for being opened up by to four drives, and sort of gives you a good idea of the size. I guess I don't have anything there for scale, but that's just heaped, piles and piles of people's meals essentially there. And almost the tops become calcified from all of the amount of material there, and in some of them it almost looked like there was ash on top, like they'd been having fires on top of them as well. So
did you see any erosion on the side of any of the middens that was really brown underneath?
Not that I can recall, but
I've seen some middens where the sort of the erosion
mineralized it.
Yeah, the erosion actually has come in on the side over quite a long period of time, and you can see very, very old shell material that's sort of gone brown, and you can see the layers
no, I did see that, yeah, and it sort of eroded the side and the tops. Yeah, it's almost like it's been compacted into a solid almost. And
it's amazing when you think about how many thousands and thousands of years it would have taken to get to that point. It's astounding. It really drives it home when you see a cutout like that on the side of a midden where it's been eroded and just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's very, very special coastline, and just the thought of having tracks and trails just going through these sort of places is really kind of hard to fathom in a way. So yeah, I was very fortunate to be able to walk down that part of the coastline. Even just here, like over in the distance, here is actually a bit of rubbish that's washed up. So even remote place like that, there's still evidence of that. This is also sea spurge, which is an introduced species that's unfortunately quite prevalent along the coast there as well. So it was a bit disappointing to see that, but I guess there's probably nowhere in the world that on the coast that isn't exposed to the waste that's coming off of fishing ships and all sorts of other things like that. This sort of reminded me of a hand or something, grasping at the sand that's in that sort of area. What else is here? This was also quite a fair way down the coastline. Just the rocks just coming straight out of these amazing sand dunes, looking all the way back. Unfortunately, I didn't have the best light down there, but it was a very special place to be. And I guess if you walk through a lot of water, you can get wet feet and then have to put on wet boots.
Oh, you sneaky bugger!
So that
payback's
can
going to be
you...
terrible for you, Loki.
Oh, it's a classic.
Sorry about that, Paul. I was trying to also get used to a bit of environmental portraiture while I was there, and so I had a few guinea pigs there, which was really fantastic. Anyhow, back onto the other photos. So just amazing. Looks like, must have been some trees that are obviously been covered over by the dunes. So it just does show how much those dunes can move around and basically suffocated these trees and created this almost, like a petrified forest or something. And in fact, there was areas where there was literally petrified forests where, the stone had turned into wood, which was pretty awesome. Really stunning sort of space. And it's also really stunning people out there as well, just able to
oh my god,
anyway, sorry, Paul.
Get it.
It's like a hair commercial.
But for me, one of my favorite parts was on the top of this massive dune and just playing with the different lines, and just showing you don't really think of a Tasmania when you see sort of scenes like that. So it's pretty incredible to be able to witness beauty like that.
Which beauty? There's a bit of beauty just before there, Loki.
Yeah, no, that's right.
The hair blowing in the breeze.
To get to that
Canon R5 shot.
Yeah, that's true.
Listing out.
That one's a good one for like a men's hair product ad or something like that. But yeah.
Lucky I got a sense of humor.
I'm never going to get invited back on any of these trips, but this is the actual sign basically showing this is the end of the track, and thankfully, in terms of allowing four drives any further, and thankfully we didn't see too much evidence that there was non-compliance to that, although the tracks do get washed over pretty quickly, so you never really know how prevalent that actually is, but it's good that there's at least something there to signify that. And then I've just got a few shots just to close out just from the air, and for me, seeing that sort of beautiful environment from the air was probably one of the many highlights. Really, there was a lot, but the particular light that we got on this shoot was quite amazing, and just being able to look back on the coastline and see all of the sea mist coming off and the light sort of dancing off of the dunes was something I'll definitely never forget. And all of the big waves barreling in as well. They're not small waves there. So
those are 5 or 6 meters well that day.
Yeah. So
it's worth noting, just looking at those rivers, you can actually walk the whole coast, but if you do, you've got to negotiate multiple rivers like that. So you have to cross them. And the best place to cross them in terms of probably how deep they are is going to be right at the wave point.
That's exactly
the waves are quite dangerous, so
it's not the safest place either.
It's not. So other than that, you would have to swim across.
They're pretty big rivers.
Yeah. Some of them are definitely very big. So they are major obstacles if you're contemplating a walk there, and you can do a walk from Pyman Heads through to Tema about 7 days, but you would need to be sufficient enough to be able to get through those obstacles and keep all your stuff dry, etc. So,
and this was the parting view, just looking back on all of the sea mist coming up off of the coast there, and looking out to the seas beyond, and I guess further from that way it goes straight under South Africa and all the way across to Argentina. So it's a massive coastline. That's why the weather and the waves are so forceful, because it's all the weather and the conditions have come such a far way to get there. So so that's my set as well from the Tarkine and yeah, the absolute beauty and the variety and the variability that you get out there in terms of the landscape is just absolutely phenomenal. So
Tom just made a comment actually, because he was down on the other end of the coastline at the same time as us as part of Art for Takayna, and he actually has just suggested he saw some pretty fairly recent four-wheel drive activity down that far south, which is quite concerning to hear. I might have another chat to Tom about that. Because that's a long way south in an area that's been closed for about six or 7 years now.
Or a barge or something that's parked there, they might take across or something. I don't know. But
yeah, there's a small barge on the Pymon Heads, or a couple of them at least, where they can take they can take ATVs and trail bikes across the Pymon Heads. The Pymon Heads area, even though it's only accessible by four-wheel drive or boat, there's quite a big shack presence there, and they all enjoy their recreational vehicle use, but they know they're not supposed to go across the Pymon, but there are barges there to take their vehicles across and head north. So it's a bit of a sore point for them and for environmentalists in terms of it being closed and in terms of it being disobeyed. It's quite a challenge to take a four-wheel drive, I think, from Sandy Cape through to Pymon Heads because of the river crossings. But certainly from the south, you don't get any major river crossings for some period of time, and that's where a lot of people that enjoy recreational four-wheel driving have their shacks or friends with shacks. So yeah. There's been lots of video footage and pictures taken throughout Tarkine in Motion and Art for Takayna events of vehicles at Rupert Point and other spots like that which are closed off. So yeah, I'm not surprised. It's disappointing, but not surprising.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting, I guess, conversation that'll probably continue for a long time, unfortunately, in Tassie, in terms of how that's all going to work out. So you just have to hope that the government sees for the future rather than the past in terms of what they choose to do. So that's pretty much it for tonight, unless anyone else has anything to add.
I'm just slowly thinking of how I'm going to get you back, Loki.
We got Lukey back last week.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. We did have a bit of fun with that.
Although
he had already published that online himself.
Yeah,
very proudly. So not quite the same.
Oh, well, we'll have to
private collection. I'll keep working on my private collection, Lucky.
Oh well, there you go.
Look, late night videos.
Should try and...
Thanks so much to everyone joining us tonight, and thanks so much to Loic as well for joining us, especially. It's been fantastic to see you again, mate. It's been a real honour to have you on with us and show you beautiful shots.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can catch up soon for a shoot or go to Cradle or something like that. It'll be awesome.
That'd be great.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, really appreciate your time, Loic. Thank you, my friend.
Pleasure. Thanks, Paul.
Great to see you, mate.
Thanks, Nick.
Good to hear you getting out there doing the real stuff, Nick.
That's right.
Nice one.
All right.
Well, I'll wave at you all from the Tarkine next week.
Nice.
We're right out on that magnificent coast, one of my favourite places on planet Earth.
You taking your camera too, Paul, or is it strictly work?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
It's photography out there at the camp. I won't be leaving it behind.
Oh, well, there you go. You need to show them how it's done. So that's fair enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff. Well,
awesome.
Look, thanks again for joining us. I guess, Paul, you're going to be away for a few weeks now, but I'm sure that we'll be able to keep things running tight to schedule with you gone, so that'll be fine.
So yeah,
that goes. I was so early last week. Nick was very impressed, weren't you?
Oh, there you go.
Oh, mate, you're beautifully organised, Paul. Well done. Well done.
Actually was. Yeah, extremely well organised. Yeah.
Nice work, guys, and we'll see you again next week. And until then, look, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks again, Loic, and we'll see you then. See everyone.